Hey man, I'm Jusko from Proud Money. The Chase Sapphire Reserve update, long rumored, is now officially at the vast majority of the details, and it is exhausting in terms of understanding what the card is offering and how you might plan your life around all of these details in order to maximize the value of the card. Chase kind of taking that coupon book cliche in the high-end travel credit card space to a new level here in terms of the number of moving parts and the number of times you have to go through Chase in order to actually maximize the things that are on offer here. So let's look at the details of what Chase is offering, and you can decide for yourself. All right, let's start with annual fees. The card annual fee going up to $7.95. Any authorized users you add would be $195 per year. The previous was $550 per year as the annual fee on this card. So obviously a big jump, over 40%. Now, of course, there are questions here about existing card holders, and then Chase has even left a little window of opportunity here where you could apply for the card at the old $550 annual fee. So what happens then? So the card becomes available on June 23rd of 2025. As I make this video, it is 6 days before that. There's a little window where you could get the card at a $550 annual fee, and what would happen is you would continue to have the old benefits of the card at the $550 annual fee, at least for the short term, and then on October 26th of this year, so only, 3 or 4 months, then the new additional benefits of this card would kick in, and you'd still be at the $550 level there, sort of enjoying some of them, and then you would go up to $7.95 once you hit the 1 year mark of having the card. Sort of the same thing for existing card holders. You are going to continue to pay $550 and the new benefits would kick in on October 26th, and then obviously you would get the $795 annual fee. So I'm not sure why they are creating this little window of time here where you would stay on the old benefits and then give it to you in October, maybe because of the fact that they're trying to sort of account for the fact that some people, got the card within the last year and are going to want to, feel like they're not getting shortchanged in any way or suddenly being asked to pay an annual fee that they didn't agree to begin with. But usually that's not how it works. Usually just everybody that was paying the old annual fee sort of gets grandfathered into the new card and they get the extra benefits until it is time to renew again. Chase doing something a little different here, and I'm not quite sure why. And I should mention that if you're thinking about getting the card this week to save yourself $245 on the annual fee, don't forget that there probably, and there is no guarantee, but there probably is going to be a bonus on the new version of the card that is significantly higher than the 60,000 points that I'm seeing right now on the Chase Sapphire Reserve. Figure it's probably going to be at least 100,000 points, so 100,000 points is 40,000 points more than 60,000 points as a bonus, so potentially you could be getting 40,000 points more by waiting and getting the card when it is at the $795 annual fee, and 400 is more than 245 if you can follow my math. So take that into consideration. All right, let's finally get to the structure of the card. What are you getting for $7.95? In terms of points earnings, you are getting 8 points per dollar on Chase travel purchases. That is across the board. Currently, it's been 5 points per dollar on flights, 10 points per dollar on hotels and car rentals. Now I'm going to even it out and just make it easy to understand. 8 points per dollar on everything. That could be a wash. It could be better or worse depending on how you see the current structure. 4 points per dollar on flights and hotel purchases that are not through Chase Travel. Currently, that's actually 3 points per dollar, although the travel category is a little more all-encompassing. I still consider this an upgrade because I think flights and hotels is where people spend the most on their travel that would have gone on the card. So 4 points per dollar versus the 3 points previously. You'll continue to get 3 points per dollar on restaurant purchases worldwide, 1 point per dollar everywhere else, although you do have a 5x on Lyft purchases and a 10x on Peloton hardware and accessories. I consider those to sort of not be core to the card, and the Lyft at least has an expiration date even on that. So we will consider those to be sort of off to the side in terms of enhanced rewards. Now, in terms of redeeming points, you can still take your Chase Ultimate Rewards points just like you always have and transfer them into the frequent flyer or hotel programs of one of Chase's partners, including Southwest, United, Hyatt, Marriott, and a lot more as well. That is not going to change. One thing that is going to change is the Chase Sapphire Reserve has for a long time allowed you to take your points, use them through the Chase travel portal, the Chase's booking engine, and get a 50% boost on the value of of your points. That is changing, although it is changing sort of slowly. And again, we have this weird October date to consider. Any points that you earn before October 25th of this year, 2025, those are going to continue to be redeemable with that 50% boost through Chase Travel, and you can do so at that 50% boost through October 25th of 2027. So you've got a couple of years that you can use your existing points and still get that boost. Afterwards, there will not be that boost anymore. It will just be a regular 1 point equals 1 cent when you redeem. However, Chase is pushing a new thing here to try and make you feel a little bit better about that, and that is the points boost, which is going to mean certain offers of hotels and airfare where you could get 2 points per dollar on those particular purchases when you book them through Chase Travel. Now, the problem with that, as far as I'm concerned, is you don't necessarily know where you're going to get those 2 points per dollar until you actually go to book somewhere. So maybe you're going to make your choice on where you go based on what Chase is offering. My guess is that most people are going to want to go where they want to go, and they're going to, if they get the points boost, feel good about it. But in many cases, they probably won't get the points boost. So it's not really the same, as far as I'm concerned, as giving a 50% boost on any travel that you book through the transfer or the Chase Travel portal there. So I think that is a worse feature that Chase is now introducing. Getting rid of that 50% boost, I think, is going to be important for a lot of people. Now let's talk about the intangibles on the card, because those obviously go a long way toward determining whether the card is worth its cost. First off, the $300 annual travel credit that has been on the Chase Sapphire Reserve will remain. So the first $300 in travel that you purchase with the card, not just through Chase Travel, any travel, will be credited back to you. Now, a $300 annual travel credit on a $550 annual fee is much more impactful than a $300 credit on a $795 annual fee. So take that into consideration. Obviously, the airport lounge network is going to stay the same here with Chase. Chase has been building out its own branded lounges, and then you've got the Priority Pass lounges as well, if that is something that is enticing to you. Obviously, that's a big piece of the equation here. We have the TSA PreCheck or Global Entry credits. Can get that on a lot of travel cards these days, but still something to mention. There are these, what I consider sort of ticky-tack credits from DoorDash and Lyft also in the card, which are going to remain. Those are kind of chopped up in a way that it is hard to maximize them, especially on the DoorDash side, so I'm not going to talk any more about those, but those will remain. Now, as far as I'm concerned, there are 3 crucial credits that have been added to the Chase Sapphire Reserve that are going to be sort of deal breakers or deal makers when it comes to you thinking about this card as potentially being worth $245 more per year than it is now. The first of those is an up to $500 credit on the Edit collection of hotels, and that is split up to a $250 credit in the first half of the year and a $250 credit in the second half of the year. So the Edit is a collection of higher end hotels that if you book them through Chase, you will not only get the discount, the $250 credit coming back to you for doing so, but you will also get things like a $100 credit actually to use at the hotel. You could get things like potentially early check-in, late check-out. You will get potentially room upgrades and all of those kind of good things. So it's very similar to the American Express Fine Hotels and Resorts program. Now, the downside to this, it's up to $500, but you have to do it once in the first half of the year, once in the second half of the year, and you have to stay at least 2 nights at these hotels. So you can be sure that you're going to be spending quite a bit more than that $250 that you are getting the credit for. And then, of course, you have to space it out in those 2 halves of the year. So if you decide to go somewhere in January and book it through the Edit, and then you come back in June and want to do it again, well, June is still in the first half of the year, so that's not going to count. You're going to have to do it from July through December. So this is some of the chopping up that American Express is so expert at. Chase is getting on board here. So up to $500, if you can use that, if you would stay at a higher end hotel twice per year and at least 2 nights and you feel like that's good value, then obviously that would go a long way toward justifying the new Chase Sapphire Reserve. The next credit is up to $300 on dining when you book your dining at certain restaurants that are part of the Chase Sapphire Reserve exclusive tables. And you get that $300 credit again split up into one half of the year and the other $150 first half of the year, $150 second half of the year. This is a little less annoying than it would be for the hotels, in my opinion, because you're probably going to eat at least twice a year and spend that much, and so it's not that big of a deal to do one in the first half and one in the second half. Now, the downside to the exclusive tables is, number one, it doesn't just mean any restaurant, it means ones that are within this program. And if you actually look in this program, in the very biggest cities, there's all kinds of restaurants, and then as the cities get smaller, there aren't as many restaurants that fit in, and as the cities get a little bit smaller than that, there aren't any restaurants. So obviously, if you have an up to $300 credit and there are none of those restaurants in your city, well, then the only way you're going to use that credit is if you are traveling to one of the other cities and you go to a restaurant that is part of the program. So if you're in New York City, you're in LA, you're in Chicago, whatever, no problem. But there are a lot of cities that aren't even there at all. I live in the Cleveland area. Cleveland's not even one of them, but there are cities like Milwaukee where I think there are 9 restaurants. I saw another one where I think there's like a dozen restaurants. So not a ton of choice. American Express does the same thing through Resi, and at least in my area, I don't have a ton of choices, but I have more than what Chase is offering here right now. So maybe Chase is going to work hard to expand this program now that they are making this a big benefit of the Chase Sapphire Reserve. But as it stands, in a lot of cities, you are going to have little to no choices in order to maximize this particular benefit. Again, up to $300 if you can use it. And then the third credit is a subscription to Apple TV Plus and Apple Music worth $250 per year. It does show an expiration of this of June 2027, so I don't know if this is going to be a permanent credit or not. A lot of times Chase has these expiration dates and then they just get pushed further and further back if they can keep the relationship going. But for now, $250 per year value of those. If you already have them and you're paying for them, then obviously you could get them free here as part of the annual fee with this card. If you don't have them, then it's up to you whether you really care. And then maybe I also should have mentioned the up to $300 credit for StubHub. Again, cut up into $150 first half of the year, $150 second half of the year. If you're someone that regularly buys tickets via StubHub, well, then maybe you can take advantage of at least one of those two halves, maybe both. Now, there are a lot of other things I could mention with this card as well, but most of them are kind of getting into the minutia. I will mention the IHG Platinum Elite status that comes with the card. There are Chase Sapphire experiences, which can be some interesting things, especially if you are in bigger cities. One thing that I absolutely do have to mention, though, is that if you spend over $75,000 on the card in a year, you're going to get some nice extra benefits. You're going to get a $500 credit with Southwest Airlines through Chase Travel. You're going to get Southwest A-list status, and then you're also going to get a $250 statement credit for purchases that you make through the shops at Chase or whatever it's called. Basically, shop through Chase's portal, and you'll get a $250 credit there. Obviously a big spend at $75,000, but not out of the realm of possibility for some of the people that are going to hold this card. So like I said, it's exhausting. You're exhausted listening to me. My mouth is dry from talking so much. What do we think about all of these things that Chase is doing at the new $795 annual fee? Well, I think there's a lot of sort of self-serving aspect to this card in terms of Chase doing things that are good for Chase, not only the $795 annual fee, but booking through their travel portal, which I read somewhere today is actually, Chase is like the third biggest seller of travel after Expedia and Booking, which are like, 75 different travel sites owned by each one of those. So Chase, huge already in the travel space, trying to make themselves even bigger. So there's a little self-serving there. You have to go through Chase for an awful lot of this stuff. Like I said, those credits are a big deal. As far as I'm concerned, when I look at this card, and more when I look at any of these sort of high-end travel cards, it really is, to me, when you look at the annual fee, what are you getting from the card that you can't get anywhere else? And usually it's airport lounges. Everything else is sort of helping you justify the annual fee. So if you really love airport lounges and you feel like, okay, I want those and I'll pay a little extra for them, and if I can feel good about all these other things, maybe $795 isn't too bad of an annual fee, well then maybe you can justify it, because otherwise when you look at pretty much everything else on this card, Sure, Chase wants you to think that you can get $2,700 worth of value out of all of this stuff. But for most of us, there's going to be all kinds of breakage, things we don't use. We're not going to use the, high-end hotels twice a year. Or we're not going to use StubHub, or we're not going to use whatever. And so we're going to get whatever value we get out of it, and we'll spend a lot of time thinking about that value. What do I have to purchase, and when do I have to purchase it, and all of that kind of thing. So there's going to be all kinds of breakage. So is this worth $795? For some people, yes. For some people, no. If you are, a high roller in New York City and you're making $300,000 and you're going to choose between the Chase Sapphire Reserve and the Amex Platinum, and it's going to be the only card that you hold, well, then you're probably not going to overthink these things. You're going to be like, I want one or the other, and I want access to airport lounges, and I'll use some of these extras, if it is convenient for me, but I'm not going to overthink it. For an awful lot of other people, if you make less money and you don't live in New York City, well, then it is a much bigger sort of equation to think about here, and still you could buy a lot of these things for the regular price of them that you would actually use in the nature of your everyday travels and everyday purchasing, and maybe you could get off a lot cheaper than $795. Yes, you wouldn't have access to airport lounges, but you could probably buy a lot of these things for less, and you could just get yourself a no annual fee card where you are going to get 2% cash back on all of those or whatever. So you have to think about really what you are putting $795 toward, and if it is really worth it to you when you are getting things that you would maybe not purchase normally, or the things that you would purchase that are on the card, how much would they cost you if you paid for them out of your pocket? So I guess all of that is a long way of saying it is what it is. When it comes to a card like this, if you're someone that is trying to justify the $795 annual fee to yourself and tying yourself up in knots to, make your purchases in the way that Chase wants you to, well, then probably this is a card that you really shouldn't be having, because you're spending way too much time thinking about your credit card and thinking about how much you paid for it, when there are plenty of people that make a lot of money, travel all the time, are just going to choose a card that is between this and American Express Platinum so that they can have some airport lounge access, and $795 is the same as $550 as far as they're concerned. That's what these cards are. They're high-end cards for people that make a lot of money, who travel a lot, and who are going to, get some of the benefits, but they're not even really going to worry too much about them. Sometimes you see people online talking about how they've got 400,000 points that they haven't used from their various cards because they're not in the game in this same way. If you're someone that doesn't make as much and you want to get this card or the American Express Platinum card, know that there's going to be a lot of breakage and that you're going to spend an awful lot of time doing things that you would not normally do in order to justify it. So that is my final word on this card. I realize it is not really a judgment of thumbs up or thumbs down, but I would love to hear your thoughts about it in that comment section below. Otherwise, I thank you for watching.